Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ask an Atheist. I'm your host, Ethan, and alongside me is Chris Shelton, critical thinker at large. Chris, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you this evening?
I'm doing good. I asked you this behind the scenes, but perhaps you could go into it again. Where did the term critical thinker at large come from?
Why I'm glad you brought that. I was going to bring that up too, because it seems pretentious, and I actually mean it. From day one of having started my channel, I've meant it as I am learning about this topic, and I'm sharing what I'm learning as I'm going.
Right.
So rather than speaking from a soapbox, I'm trying to speak from a helpful lectern. I just kind of trying to help educate as I learn. And so I've made plenty of mistakes along the way in talking about different things with critical thinking, but it's all been an honest effort to just try to get better at it. And that's where that comes from. And it used to be that I was in Minnesota, and so I was identifying as the Minnesota critical thinker. And then I moved. And I was in Denver, and I was like, well, shit, now what? So I went, okay, well, at large. I'll just say I'm the critical thinker at large. And and nobody else was doing it. There was skeptics, and there was atheists, and there's this, and there's that. But nobody was really, well, hey, I'm a critical thinker. So I was like, well, I am, so.
I mean, that's true. I like to think I'm a critical thinker, but I primarily identify myself as a skeptic or an atheist. So yes, critical thinker stands out more. Could you explain and go into what critical thinking is and why is it important?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's basically it's a discipline. I used to look at it as a set of, like as a skill set or as like a tool set or something. But now I think of it much more as a discipline, in the same way that I think like martial arts is a discipline. You have to train your mind and your body to it, right? It doesn't come naturally. You don't just, know how to chop your hand through bricks. You really have to learn and practice at it. I think critical thinking is the same way, because our brains are kind of tuned to think emotionally and then use our rationale to justify our emotional decision-making process. And critical thinking is about flipping the script on that and using rationality and using the tool set and fallacies and rhetoric and, thinking logically to try to overcome that emotional tendency that we have. And I think it's everybody. It's not, well, these people have it and these people don't. It's kind of universal. It's kind of how we are. And critical thinking is a tool to overcome that.
It's true. It can be difficult at times because I converse with a lot of Republicans, and I'll hear their rhetoric.
Yeah.
And while it's easy to quickly label them something, I remember what it was like to think like many of them. And I was just personally never given the tools to think about those things. I would utter, it's like I look at my old Facebook posts from years ago and I'll share them sometimes and I just cringe, like, good God, like I supported Trump. If you disrespected the flag, you should be in jail.
Yep.
How dare you kneel? I tooted all those horns, but
I hear you. I used to be a ditto head.
A ditto head? What's that?
Oh my God. I am so dating myself, I guess. Ditto head, a follower of Rush Limbaugh. In the 1990s, especially when he was really rising.
I used to get the Limbaugh letter. I was 12 years old, and I would get it every month. My grandpa would hand it to me, and I was like, Rush Limbaugh is my hero. When I'm older, I'm going to be a conservative speaker just like him.
Yep, that's right. I swear to God, I was totally on that boat. All through the early 90s as a Scientologist, which is what I was back then, and that was my big thing. It was pretty heavily conservative. And it kind of libertarian / conservative values. Is what was kind of preached in that group. So that's the background I came from, and I really did a lot of 180s coming out of there and rethinking all that crap, and really and kind of putting human rights at the forefront. Right, that's something I can always fall back on, no matter what the politics or the argument or the social thing or whatever it is. I can always fall back on, look, human rights are always the thing that we can, and I think really in the end must come to an agreement on, you know, that's just kind of a universal thing. And that got me through a lot of confusions politically.
I still find myself at times when I hear certain things, there's that internal conservative trigger, that emotional side that I still like react, and I have to go, wait a second. Yep. No. And I have to, you know, question myself back into reason, because those.
And isn't that critical thinking right there? Isn't that what the point? Right? That's what I was talking about, right? It's like you have this emotional, and then you go, hang on. And you discipline yourself to think it through. And it's hard. We all, you know, and I fail all the time at it, but it doesn't mean you don't keep working at it, you know?
And I think the biggest step is being okay with being wrong. Like,
right, exactly.
Don't dig your heels in. To me, I could be wrong about anything at any moment. And when new information comes available, I should be prepared to change my opinion.
Absolutely. So, I think that's true.
Let's go a little bit into your Scientology background. Tell, especially like hit on any important notes that you think it's important for people to hear about Scientology.
Well, gee, okay.
Hard to
couple hours, right? Okay, actually, this is the most important thing you need to know about Scientology from somebody who did it for over 3 decades. At all levels, bottom to top, hardworking. I was hardcore all the way in. And I will tell you now, the summary of Scientology is that Scientology is a money-making scam that uses religious cloaking to hide its true intent and gain IRS tax exemption from the US government. And that is basically all there is to it. Everything else about Scientology is, to one degree or another, smoke and mirrors to hide that basic truth about it. And no one else, the only people in that group who actually know the truth of that is the guy at the very top. Everyone else is in on the belief set and believes it's the real deal.
So do you think I'm totally blanking on his name right now.
Miscavige?
David Miscavige. You think he is knowingly ripping people off?
Yeah, I am positive that he knows what's what. I think that I have evidence that he was a true believer when he was a kid. He got involved with Scientology when he was just a teenager. He grew up around it because of his father. And he went off and joined the Sea organization, I think when he was only like about 15, 16 years old. And he started working right under L. Ron Hubbard very quickly. So he was right away into this crazy world. And then he had his, whatever weird tendencies he's got, because he's a little psycho. And I mean, just to be blunt and not to use psychiatric labels, so I'm just going to say psycho, because he beats people, he hurts people, and he gets off on it. Yeah, he does.
Documentaries and stuff on him, and the way he hires people to do certain things, and the way he screams at others. It's kind of scary.
Yeah, it is. And he's intense. I've been in the same room as him, and he's an intense guy. He's like this tall. I mean, the dude is tiny, but you don't really notice that when you're a Scientologist in the room with him. He's, it's
larger than life.
Oh yeah, very much so. And he's got this, and there is legitimately a presence that he has. There is a charisma that he has. It's undeniable. He's got a very intense gaze, that kind of thing. But he's a dick, I mean, I'm not under his power anymore, and so it's like, fuck that guy. And he is a scammer. He's running it as a scam now. I'm absolutely convinced that is true, because there's no way you could be a true believer and do the things that he does. And also omit to do a bunch of stuff that he's not doing, that anybody who would be trying to grow Scientology, they would be doing certain things, and he doesn't do those things. And that's very telling to me of his true intent.
What are your thoughts on Tom Cruise? Like, because he seemed like he genuinely buys into all of it, but I'm sure that's easy for him when he has all these people at his beck and call. Like, based on the one of the series I saw, there were actually people they were trying to cast for Tom Cruise's girlfriend.
Yes, I remember when that happened, actually.
Really?
Yeah. Now here's the thing about that is, yeah, it was a whole, okay. So the Church of Scientology is a very tiny outfit. There's about 5,000, probably about 4,000 at this point, people who form the core of it. Okay, the real hardcore center of the movement or the group is the Sea organization, and that's where I worked for 17 years. I was part of that, and the Sea Org are like the fanatics. I mean, the really, 24/7, yes sir, no sir, how high sir kind of outfit. And there was a project launched, and we didn't know it had anything to do with Tom Cruise. I just observed it from the side because a guy I knew was working directly on it. And what they were doing was scouring through all of Scientology to find all the supermodels, all the most beautiful women in Scientology. And there were some, because there was actresses and aspiring actresses and models who are in Scientology. And they were all being rounded up for this special project, right? And I had no idea what it was. Nobody did. It was just this, they're looking for talent.
Right.
And then years later, this story breaks about Tom Cruise's wife and, how the church had helped him find her. And I went, oh my God, that's connected. The timing was perfect. That's exactly when that happened, So that's how it was kind of done in broad daylight of Scientologists, of Sea Org members doing the work without having a clue what they were actually working on.
I wish I could just walk into like the headquarters and just talk to them, because I don't understand a great majority of what they do, particularly the obsession with, and I'm curious how much this impacted you, but they're known to go after any public critics, and they will bury you. Like, they create a lot of hateful stuff, websites, they call your job. There is endless amounts of things they do. Were you ever a victim of that?
Yeah. I've got a hate website up on me by the church that's produced by the Church of Scientology, with a wonderful video from my ex-wife trashing me. And that was a lot of fun to see. Because I don't bear her any ill will. And I've said from day one, when I've written about, my infidelity, because that existed, that happened, right? And I'm not going to deny that. I did that. And that was a pretty scummy thing for me to do. On the other hand, there was a lot of other context I could give you about that situation, that might moderate your feelings of hatred toward me because I cheated on my wife, right? But there's other claims made. What's that?
You're human. You made a mistake.
I made a huge mistake, and
yeah,
I owned it. And in fact, anyway, I did more than my share of amends for that. I did a 3-year prison program for that. I mean, there's a lot to that story. And I say all that, only because that's one thing that they harp on is, oh, he was cheating. But then they call me this and this and this other thing that have nothing to do with reality, that was never true. And they just kind of mix it all up into this mix, And fortunately, for me, and actually for the other people that Scientology goes after at this point, that reputation is no longer really earned or deserved. Scientology has lost a lot of its teeth because of the exposure. Oh yes, because of the exposure we have done. It has been a direct result of the exposure. It's not like it lost its teeth and then we started talking about it. It's we all stood up knowing full well they could destroy us.
Right.
And decided we were going to speak up anyway. And then through speaking up, through the Going Clear documentary, the Scientology in the Aftermath show, Emmy Award winning, by the way, right? All of that, now everybody knows what Scientology is and what it's about. If you care to look, it's a Google search away, and all the truth of it is right there. It wasn't always that way. prior to 2007, it wasn't that way at all. You had to really dig. And then Anonymous came on the scene and changed everything. So the pattern, the sequence of events has defanged Scientology. They haven't sued anybody in a couple decades now.
Really? I thought they did that all the time.
No, they lost a lot of money. They lost their suit against Time Magazine. They were suing Time Magazine back in the early 90s for millions and millions of dollars, and they lost. And that means they lost all the money that they invested in that suit. And David Miscavige looked at that and went, yeah, we've got a nice, tough reputation. We're just going to live on that now. And they haven't really gone after anybody, including, surprisingly, they haven't gone really after anybody very hard for trademark infringement. So you have independent Scientologists, people coming out of Scientology, away from the church, and basically setting up their own denomination of Scientology outside of the official church.
Really? And
yeah, I don't endorse any of that crap. It's all bullshit. But people do it. And the church has not ruined them, has not gone after them. The last time Scientology really, really ruined somebody legally was, I mean, kind of in the 90s, It's been a long time. So I feel a little safer, these days about doing what I do than I did when I first started. And other ex-Scientologists and I have talked about this. I mean, as recently as a week or two ago on my podcast, we talked about how Scientology's influence in Clearwater, Florida, which is where their main base of operations is almost nothing. They've got nobody on the city council. They got no real political influence. They've never been able to vote a Scientologist into office. The Scientologist has never even run for office there.
Well, that's a good thing.
And they don't have any of the police or the city council on their payroll because we now have a guy on the city council. This is Mark Bunker. He's pro us, he anti-Scientology. So he's on the city council and he's making waves and doing all kinds of fun stuff. And he's kind of showing the city that they don't have to be afraid of Scientology because it isn't really a big black bear. It's a little weasel in the corner making a lot of noise.
It's got a big bark.
Yeah, it's got this great big bark.
Non-stop barking, but can't really deliver.
That's right. And that's because of, I really want to stress, that's because of all the work that we've been doing. And I put me as a very, very tiny part of that. I got a little channel. I do my part. Leah, Mike, Alex Gibney, Lawrence Wright, the whole of Anonymous in 2007. Those were the people who were the true game changers on this. And we're seeing that now, that Scientology is really just this little pipsqueak operation. And they're not getting away with the crap they used to get away with. So I'm happy about that. Now I say all that, and I want to make it clear that that doesn't mean that they don't do hate websites, they don't troll you, they don't go after you, they don't hire private investigators to go through your trash, because they do. They still do the slimy stuff. So, it's still a mixed bag as to what's going to happen to you. But for example, Ethan, you have nothing to worry about.
Yeah, I didn't think I'm active enough on my dislike for Scientology.
Yeah.
Although they are one of the people I dislike the most, or one of the religious organization I dislike the most, only because I've spent more time on them than I have at least other religions.
Well, they're worthy of your contempt and reporting. Yeah. So. Good.
Question from Keith Heath.
Yeah.
What was the first thing that caused you to doubt your Scientology?
That's a good question. The first thing, the first really, really big thing was the thing that I remember the most, and was the beginning of what was, the 10-year end of me getting the hell out of that thing, was a successful project that I did while I was a Sea Org member. I pulled off this amazing thing, and I worked with all these staff in San Diego at the church there, and we hired a whole bunch of people in a very short amount of time, and pulled off kind of a miracle in about 3 weeks. And I went back to Los Angeles, where I was based, and kind of not only didn't get a hero's welcome, I kind of got shit on. And I got really very, because I wanted to go repeat that success in other places. And I knew the formula, I knew how to do it. And I was trying to convince people, let's do this. And not only was nobody interested, they were actually derogatory toward me. And it kind of opened my eyes to this bureaucracy that I was working in, and this and the fact that what we were telling ourselves that we were doing, well, obviously that's not really what we were doing, because if it was, then we'd be repeating this success in all these other places, and nobody was interested. And I just thought, okay, something's really, really off here. And this was actually a really big deal. This was not a small little pet project I had. This was big. So so that was the first thing that kind of opened my eyes, because it showed me that there was a deception in the very nature of what we were doing. You know, we were focused on making these organizations, these churches, bigger and more, more successful, get more people in, make more Scientologists. And I had figured out a way to do that using, stuff Hubbard said, and then, got rained on. So
wasn't Hubbard, if I recall, and please correct me if this is incorrect, but didn't he have like a philosophy that said attack, don't defend, or something like that? Yep.
Never defend, always attack. Always attack, never defend. That is the legal. That's the legal strategy and the PR strategy.
Okay. So that essentially Ron Hubbard's philosophy there is the basis of how they interact with everyone.
That's right. And that's why you see, these crazy hate websites and these over-the-top accusations and these exaggerated, bloated, hyperbolic claims about critics all being criminals and being paid by Big Pharma. And I mean, I'm seriously still waiting for my check, right? I mean, you can see how I'm just, the Big Pharma is just raining money down on me here. Yeah, right. So yeah, this is their nonsense.
Well, and I'll get to Kaitlyn's question in a minute, but when you say they reference Big Pharma, from my understanding, that's because they're completely opposed to psychiatry and psychology, correct?
Yes. Yes. And I want to be clear. They want to destroy psychiatry.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Like they hate it. They have complete disdain and they think it's hurtful.
Yes. They actually believe it's a destructive subject from beginning to end, top to bottom. There is nothing good in it and never was, and it needs to be literally eradicated from the face of the earth.
And that includes mental health medication, correct?
Yes. Psychotropics of any kind are just, as far as they're concerned, it's all pseudoscientific garbage. And some of their criticisms, of course, are correct, because there are problems with pharmaceuticals and their distribution and their pricing scales. But to just outright say all of it is a delusional fantasy, and we, the Church of Scientology, are the ones with the real answers, and we're the ones who know how to heal and cure mental illness, that is even more delusional. And I know what they do to people. Like I know their methods, right? And they're not even remotely workable.
Well, yeah, they lock people in rooms too, like those jails with very limited stuff, no outside contact, and you can be in there. They can have you be scrubbing the toilets on your hands and knees. Like, it's pretty horrible what they do to people and how demeaning it is.
Yeah, and that was the 3-year prison program I did, was that kind of demeaning hard labor, and it was tough, man. I mean, it was running everywhere. You can't talk to people who aren't in your sequestered little part of the program. That's called the RPF, or the Rehabilitation Project Force. That was rough. That was not fun.
Question from Kaitlyn Beyond. Do you think it's more likely for someone to be atheist after leaving Scientology? I'm not sure I see how someone could believe in a God after exiting that religion.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag with people coming out of Scientology. I know quite a few ex-Scientologists, and some are religious and some are not. I am agnostic. I just have a great big I don't know on the whole question, and I pretty much go at it from that point of view. More on the no than yes side of the equation. I've got my own ideas about spirituality and stuff. But as far as Scientology goes, see, the thing about Scientology is it's not really about a God. So you can have a God belief and be a Scientologist, or you can be atheist and be a Scientologist, and you guys won't, and there won't be any conflict there. Because Scientology doesn't really address God. What Scientology is trying to do is make you into God. So that's kind of how that works.
Okay. Kyle Brewer, thanks for the $1 super chat. Question from Allison. Does Scientology ever recruit people from LGAT, large group awareness training, groups that are disguised as self-help?
Yes, they do. And by that, I mean that there are people who did Landmark Forum or did Landmark or did EST or did other kinds of LGAT stuff. Those are the biggest, most successful ones, I think. But yeah, people get recruited from those things into Scientology, not at the LGAT training, not at the EST or Forum or whatever training, because that's its own thing. By the way, EST and Forum and all that, they ripped off Scientology.
Really?
Yes. Yeah, Werner Erhard started the whole thing in the 70s with EST, or Erhard Seminar Training. And these were these 4-day workshops. And he ripped it off so hardcore. Get this, okay? He ripped it off so thoroughly that in the 4-day workshops, the original EST workshops, the Scientology dictionary was used to define the language that they were using, because he was taking it straight out of Scientology. So he just used their dictionary in his trainings to teach his people, right? And eventually they came up with their own materials and swirled it around and did this and that with it, and came up with it became Landmark and Landmark Forum, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a whole little history with that actually has some Scientology roots in it. And Scientology is ripped off from earlier occult practices and earlier spiritualism and Gnosticism and stuff. So it's just this parade of plagiarism going through history, you know.
How does Scientology recruit these days now?
Well, as they always have, right? During the pandemic, everything was pretty shut down, and now they're back on the streets. So they get to do personality tests is their #1 introductory line. They try to sell Dianetics books or basic Hubbard Scientology books. They bring people in to watch films or videos, but mostly they try to get people in through this audio-visual sort of maze that they've created in their new buildings. They've got these displays and audio-visual, you know, videos and stuff, and they're trying to recruit people that way. And Miscavige has been trying to do that for about the last 20 years, and it's just been a total disaster. And that's one of the reasons their numbers have just tanked.
They're like a giant, and Kaitlyn also said what I was thinking. They're like a giant MLM, it seems.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly right. Or we could say MLMs are like cults, because they are. They use the same techniques. Recruitment techniques and retention techniques are basically the same. From whether you're talking LGATs, cults, or MLMs, they're all doing the same stuff. They pretty it up with different language, and the seeming purpose of the activity is different. With MLMs, it's all about self-empowerment through making money by activating your social networks to make you rich, right? Which is just total horseshit. It never works. And then you have the LGAT trainings, which is all about this, you know, training a lot of people at once to have these spiritual experiences or these very powerful personal experiences. And then Scientology is more one-on-one. We're gonna, you know, give you this fervor, awe experience, and then we're gonna tell you the reason you're feeling such fervor and euphoria right now is because L. Ron Hubbard is the source of that, and he's the one who figured out how to make you feel that way. And isn't that wonderful? And don't you want more of it, right?
I just don't understand how people fall for this shit, especially like with L. Ron Hubbard, the fact that he was a fiction writer. Like, yeah. Why would someone believe this?
Well, look at the time period that he came from, for one. If we want it, we can contextualize it a couple different ways, okay? Historically speaking, L. Ron Hubbard was a pulp fiction writer across multiple genres in a time when well-known and well-regarded scientists were becoming writers or were writing during the golden age of science fiction. Arthur C. Clarke was legit scientist who also wrote 2001. I'm trying to remember the names of the other guys. They're not coming to me right now, but Isaac Asimov, total hardcore scientist, also writer. Robert Heinlein, engineer, writer. So it wasn't really that weird for that demographic to regard a writer as somebody who could come up with some scientific truths, or vice versa. And Hubbard purposefully put himself in that community, in that crowd, and presented himself that way. And in 1950, the first effort was not Scientology, was not a religion, it was a science. It was Dianetics, the modern science of mental health. Mm-hmm. Right? And he's like, well, you know, our science, and here we are, and this is the new psychology, and rah, 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 and you can do it yourself, right? And this was Dianetics. That's a
pretty good impression of him.
Yeah, I listened to way too many lectures from that guy. So, so he was presenting as a scientist first. And then to his followers, he wove this narrative that he had gone from scientific research into discovering this life energy, this life force that he called theta. And that led to a spiritual existence that was scientifically proven. It wasn't, but that's what he claimed.
Right.
And that led directly into Scientology. So he just kind of weaved this little narrative of credulity, and people at the time bought into it. And over the decades, Scientology has learned to keep up with the times in terms of its marketing, not in terms of its practice, because it's never changed what it does to you, but how it presents has changed to be culture specific and go with the time. So in the 60s, it was much more spiritual, baby. And in the 70s, it was more about finding your way. And in the 80s, it was, you know, life is the battlefield and your mind is your weapon, right? And so this was kind of the marketing appeal of Dianetics and Scientology in the 80s, and, you know, and on and on and on. So they've changed and rolled with the times as far as that goes.
Okay. So we got a few more questions coming in.
Yeah,
Kyle, has your mental health improved after leaving Scientology?
Yes, absolutely. From the very day that I got away from it and every day since. Yes.
Question from Allison. How do you deal with the fear of people coming after you to hurt you from Scientology after you left? Do you feel safe now?
I feel safe from Scientology now, actually, because of all the things we talked about earlier in the show. I know they're still out there and they still don't like me and stuff, but I've done okay in terms of avoiding any real serious unpleasantness, because I'm not at the level where they care enough about me. And I'm okay with that. I didn't get into this to antagonize Scientology and to attacking me. That's not why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Well, yeah, so, I can't imagine that being fun.
Yeah, no, nobody wants that, and nobody deserves it, and it's just really, it's awful when it's happening to you. And I have very good friends who have experienced that, you know, including Leah. So you know, so I know what that is like, and it's no fun. But I'm not concerned about it for myself, because, like I said, I'm kind of not really at their level. And Scientology actually just doesn't have the resources anymore to spread themselves so thin. They've got some very serious legal problems right now, because this Danny Masterson rape case is all about Scientology in the courtroom. I mean, the preliminary hearing was half of it was about Scientology, and the judge was totally down with it, allowed all of it. So we're going to see Scientology not on trial. What we're going to see, and I don't want to put Scientology on trial. What I want to see, and what they're going to show, is how the Church of Scientology, organizationally, as a body, interfered with a criminal investigation, multiple criminal investigations of a very serious nature of rape, sexual assault, against numerous women who were bringing these charges against Danny Masterson, and they covered up evidence, they covered up the crime, they cajoled these women into silence, and they let Danny Masterson get away with what he got away with. So So that all happened, and that is what they are now dealing with, because that's going to trial, and that's going to trial later this year or early next year. And so they're way more concerned about that right now than they are about little old me. Big deal. Yeah, it's a huge deal. I cannot wait for this, because it's going to be huge. There might well be, if things go the way I hope they do, and it could get derailed. I mean, things could still happen that could derail this. But if it goes the way I think it will, we're going to see Sea Org members getting called to the stand as witnesses in this, and that is going to be awesome.
Well, do you think they're going to have the courage to speak out and not lie under oath?
No, but they're going to be shown to be liars. The cover-up is all going to be very, very clear. Okay. And the state who's prosecuting Danny Masterson is going to show, because the state's listening closely to its advisors. The women who were involved were Scientologists, and they're getting help from people like, you know, not me, but people like me who are consulting on this, who know Scientology inside and out. So when they get these people on the stand, they're going to skewer them with their own policy if they try to fumble around and lie their way through it. And there's also written records that they can get hold of, and I can't wait to see what they're going to have on that. Because Scientology keeps everything in writing.
They do?
Everything. Yeah. Yeah, there's records.
Oh, I feel like they'll do everything they can to cover it up, and that
I think they will too. But the records cross-reference themselves.
Okay.
And some of the records have already gotten out. Some of the reports and some of the filings and stuff. So, yeah, it's going to be it'll be interesting to see how this rolls out. I you know, high hopes, low expectations. That's my view about Scientology legally, because they drag things out and they make things very, very difficult. But this is a criminal case being brought by the state, and Danny Masterson's going down. And I just hope Scientology, some part of Scientology, goes down with him, because it deserves to. Yeah.
Question from Brainbug, which I believe you've already answered, but what type of harassment does Chris currently experience? And I recall you saying it's just right now nothing except for there's a hate website up about you, correct?
Pretty much so. I get trolled sometimes, and I can't always tell who it is. But, you know, that's hardly anything.
All right. We're going a bit over time, but I'd like to get to a few other things. Sure. I see a big Iron Man poster in your background. So yes. Are you a comic book, MCU Iron Man? Where are you at?
I am MCU cinema, cinematic MCU. I love that. Oh yeah, MCU, right? Marvel Cinematic Universe. Yeah. And but I'm kind of finding myself, if I'm really being honest right now, interest fading after Phase 4. I'm like, I might be just about done with this. I really love my Iron Man, and I'm definitely Team Iron Man. But
Junior, you approve?
Yeah, but we'll see. We'll see where we go with all of it, you know. But I've really, really, really loved everything that I have seen in the MCU from Iron Man forward, I would say, has been just nothing but impressive to me. I've loved all of it.
I've loved it all. There have been some movies that I'm kind of like Thor: The Dark World.
Well, yes, Dark World. Yes, yes. Everybody's kind of like, I love Thor. I love Thor Ragnarok. Dark World.
Exactly. Ragnarok was great because they stopped. Chris Hemsworth was like let free. He wasn't stuck playing this like theater type person. He was allowed to have fun with the role. Yes. And to me, that's when Thor just got way better.
That's right.
But then we get into Avengers: Age of Ultron. I loved Ultron as a villain. Like the voice, how he was made, but the movie, it was just meh.
I was more than meh, but I do get your point. I do see what you're saying. It left a bad aftertaste a little bit, and I get that, and I can empathize with that. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it an awful lot.
Same.
Yeah, I think my my ill will towards movies franchises really gets going on Star Wars more than it does on MCU.
Before we jump into Star Wars, are you watching the Disney Plus shows right now of the MCU, like Loki, WandaVision, Winter Soldier?
We watched WandaVision all the way through.
Meh.
Yeah. We watched about 3 episodes of Winter Soldier or Falcon and what's the other one? Was it Winter Soldier? Yeah, Falcon and Winter Soldier. Yeah.
Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yeah, I couldn't get into it, honestly. I tried. We watched 3 or 4 episodes, and I was like, this is really not doing it for me. And I haven't yet hit Loki, but I have real high hopes, and I'm going to tell you, Tom Hiddleston, that character, it is a perfect storm for me. I love Loki, so I have very high hopes for that show, but I'm waiting for it all to hit, and then I'm going to watch it all the way through in like a day or something. All
right. Well, don't have very high hopes.
Really?
I enjoy it. I enjoy it a lot.
Okay.
But it's kind of something very different to get used to.
Oh. Okay. So, they're going in a different direction.
Yeah, it's a very different than any other MCU thing I've seen. So that's I don't want to ruin anything, but just don't be sitting here like, oh my God, this is awesome. Just go in and don't expect what you're used to.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll check it out. We'll see how it goes. Conversely, and I'm not trying to force this change, but it just keeps coming to mind for me. The Mandalorian salvaged Star Wars for me.
It's salvaged. I mean, I loved Star Wars, but how did Mandalorian salvage it?
Because the movies, the last trilogy, just absolutely ruined it for me. I wanted
whole trilogy?
I was okay with Force Awakens, and I really hope I'm not like losing you viewers right now. But Force Awakens was basically it was basically Star Wars rehashed, right, with a new crew, new generation. I'm like, okay, I'm going with you, JJ. Let's see where you take this. And then Rian Johnson came along, and I have nothing but respect for Rian Johnson's other work. Looper was one of the best time travel sci-fi stories I have ever seen. It was it was brilliant. It was really well constructed. Time travel movies are the trickiest with plotting and stuff.
Yes.
Oh, you will
find holes.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
It's so hard to stay internally consistent. Even Back to the Future screwed it up in a very significant way that nobody really talks about. But what
we'll talk about it.
Well, I'll get there in a second, because I don't know if your viewers are really down with the minutia of Back to the Future. It was 1980s, right?
I don't care.
Okay, well, I'll just say 2 DeLoreans existed in the same time in the same place in the Old West. But they never went to the other DeLorean to get the spare parts they needed. They kept screwing around with the one they had. But 2 of them existed in that same space-time. Anyway.
Dude!
Right? Okay.
Wait.
Yeah,
hang on.
he went back to the Old West, but Doc had also gone back, and so there were 2.
Oh my God! How did I never notice that?
Right. It was kind of big, but nobody ever talked about it, so I just kept it to myself. It's just kind of one of those things. Why ruin the movie for everybody, right?
Mind with that one.
Yeah.
Sorry. Spoiler alert. If you haven't seen Back to the Future yet, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. Sorry about that one. Okay, but in terms of Star Wars, Rian Johnson, great movie maker, great writer. I'll give him that. I give him props, right? Knives Out was fun. It was a fun movie. Looper was amazing. What he did to Star Wars was unfucking forgivable. I will never forgive him for what he did. I mean, from the very first scene, I'm going to take this and I'm going to twist it all up just for the sake of twisting it up. There was no fan service. There's no story service. There is no bigger picture. It's just, I want to fuck with it, so I'm going to fuck with it. And
that's what it felt like.
Oh, it was totally that.
J.J. Abrams isn't perfect, but it feels like he took what J.J. Abrams set up, like this Snoke, this big thing, and then just Star Wars spoilers. Just kills him, and it's like, what? Like, I don't know. I don't like what he did at all. I think he just ruined the movie prior.
That's right. He took everything that was exactly like you said. He took the perfect pass. It wasn't the perfect pass. It was a wobbly pass, but he took a pass that he could have run with, and he just totally fumbled it all over the field. I mean, totally. And it was pretty unrecoverable because to strain that analogy, because the third movie was just pick up the pieces that Rian Johnson left all over the floor and try to make some semblance of normalcy out of this, and it was just a total disaster. So unfortunately, I grew up with Star Wars. I was there at the Grauman's Chinese in the line around the block at 7, 8 years old. I was there in that line seeing Star Wars for the first time in the movies when it was, like I'm that old school with Star Wars. So watching the prequels was no fun.
So
and then seeing this, I was just like, But The Mandalorian,
phenomenal.
It totally resuscitated the entire thing for me, because here was Jon Favreau totally getting why Star Wars worked in the first place.
Yep. And Jon Favreau, I think, is underestimated. He literally birthed the MCU.
Yes.
And then saved Star Wars. And now he's created this new Star Wars universe that all these shows are going to spawn off of. Like this guy.
Yes.
What he does, it's like he craps gold.
He is so good. Because the reason I'm going to say he's so good is not only is he creative, there's a lot of creative people out there. He understands the themes and the characters, and he understands the spirit, the culture of Star Wars, the reason it exists and the reason it's popular. He gets that. And that's what he starts with. He starts with that foundation and he builds on it. He's not trying to tear it apart like Rian Johnson was and, ooh, what can I do with this? Well, clearly not much. Jon Favreau, he builds on what worked. And then he adds his creativity to it, and he brings that old samurai story in. And it's just, I'm really curious where it's going to go now. I have no idea, but I was very impressed with what he did.
Did you like the Boba Fett actor they used?
Yeah, I thought he was okay. Yeah, I was okay with that. I wasn't quite. I thought that part of him going over and taking over Jabba's place was kind of interesting, but it seemed kind of weird to me. Like what did he just do? I mean, he killed some people, but what position does that put him in now? Really? It didn't seem like it was really much of anything, so I was a little confused by that. But maybe I missed something on that line.
If you could, put the Star Wars movies in order from your favorite to your least favorite.
Oh, God. I don't know if I can do all of them, but I will say that the best is Empire. Empire Strikes Back is absolutely the best storytelling Star Wars story. But of course it relies on Star Wars. So I have to put the original right up there, because Empire doesn't make sense without Star Wars, and Star Wars was a legit great movie. So
A New Hope.
Yeah, New Hope. That's right. So those two are kind of my tops. Return was okay. Return was all right. It was okay. It could have been a lot better. The Ewok thing was a little bit too much, merchandising heavy. Trying to think through the other ones right now. Solo was okay. Rogue One was okay. I mean, these were not movies that really hit the nail on the head for me. They just didn't. I wanted them to. I had incredibly high hopes for them. And I don't think I am judging them because of what's not there that I thought should be there. I'm not trying to, remake the movie and that they didn't make the one I wanted, so it's no good. I didn't really get caught up in it, in either one, There were things that were going on that confused me in them. And although some people would say it's not too hard to do. Yeah. Yeah, I kind of like that. I'm thinking right now about the prequels, and I'm thinking that the last one, the third, the third one, Revenge of the Sith.
Yes, I really enjoyed.
I enjoyed that one. I enjoyed that one, but the setup to it, the first and second prequels, were just so poorly executed.
So I think part 2 should be episode 2, a crappy love story, because that's all it was. The dialogue and everything was just like, what am I watching?
Oh, it was awful.
Yeah,
and it was so badly acted. I mean, the memes now. Are you seeing these memes circulating around of Padme and Anakin?
Oh yeah.
Have you seen some of those? They're hilarious. I got more entertainment out of those memes than I did out of the entire movie. You know what I'm saying? Like,
dude, they have bad. Funny ones.
Oh, it was painful to watch. When I was watching it, I'm watching this love story, and I'm like, these two hate each other. This is the worst thing I've ever seen. This is awful. I was not convinced at all. So, yeah, it was bad.
And then last question. Secular Rarity says, now do it for the Die Hard movies. So I'm going to say part 1, then part 3, then 2, then... Oh, wait, no, hang on. Part 1, part 3, part 4, I believe it's... Wow, which is the one... Yeah, Live Free or Die Hard.
Yeah, Live Free or Die Hard. I remember that one with Timmy.
Is that number 4?
Yeah, I think that's number 4.
Okay, so then
what was number 3?
3, 4.
Three was
New York City with Samuel L. Jackson.
That was 3, right? Because 2 was at the airport. Can you
solve the riddle from it?
Right. Which one?
Okay, so you have a 5-gallon jug.
Oh God, yeah, that thing. Yeah.
Do you remember it?
You got to pour the water, and I remember.
You have to get exactly 4 gallons of water in the 5-gallon jug, and if you're even over or under in a little bit, the bomb goes off.
Right. That's right. They had a 5-gallon, and they had what, a 1 gallon or?
No, a 5-gallon and a 3-gallon.
And a 3.
And you have to get exactly 4 gallons into the 5
Yeah, it's a sequence thing. I'd have to sit down with some paper. I'm no good at that.
I'm remembering, you put the 3 into... Wait, crap. Hang on. Oh, no. You fill up the 5.
Yeah.
Pour it into the 3. Yeah. That leaves 2. You empty the 3. You pour the 2 into the 3. Then you fill up the 5-gallon again and fill up the other one, which brings it to 3, leaving exactly 4 gallons.
4 gallons. That's right. There you go. That's the sequence. That's right.
Sweet. I'm glad I remember that.
Yeah, that was a good job, man. That's a good job. Actually, for me, the sequence is kind of the sequence that they came out in a little bit. I don't know, though. I really did enjoy Live Free or Die Hard, actually, more than I should have. I saw it a lot of times, too.
Good.
It was good. It was. That was the one that had Kevin Smith in it, too. I enjoyed that one, but I don't know, maybe it's a little bit of a guilty pleasure, but I liked them all. I did.
I don't like 5. I think.
Oh no, I didn't even see 5. Sorry, skip 5.
Okay,
no, 5 was
really bad.
Yeah, 5 was a little bit. 5 was like, why did you do this? Why did you do this to us? Why did you inflict this on us?
All right.
Yeah.
All right, Chris. Thanks for sitting down. Where can everyone check you out at? And what else do you have going on?
Okay, you can check me out at my channel. It's Chris Shelton, Critical Thinker at Large. Excuse me. I have I post content 3 times a week. We do a live call-in show every Friday night, and tomorrow night it won't be call-in because I'm missing my soundboard, which allows me to plug my phone in. So that'll come next week, but we will be doing a live show tomorrow. Then we have a podcast on Saturdays, Sensibly Seeking podcast on Saturdays, and a critical Q&A show every Sunday where I answer viewer questions. Sometimes live, often not pre-recorded most of the time. So that's the content I put up. And if you're actually curious about Scientology, you can check out my book, Scientology A to Xenu, An Insider's Guide to What Scientology is Really All About. And that is pretty clearly a breakdown of Scientology, not just my experience with it. So, yeah.
Well, thank you. Real quick, I need to thank my patrons, Cindy PLAZA, Kenneth Leonard, Skye, JumpandShoot, Oz, P, Secular Rarity, Philip Leitch, Kaitlyn Beyond, Toast, Richard Gilliver, Sunset, Sarge, the Blazing Wizard Pope, Ameet, Mathew, WKL, and Ray Sylvester. Thank you all for your patronage. Chris, thanks for sitting down with me.